Okay, welcome everybody again. I'm here yet for another episode of Transformation Thursday, where we talk about turning points in life, pivotal moments in life, how we deal with change, what are we creating for our future. And today I'm super excited. My guest is Susan Kiamba. Do I pronounce that correct?
You
Sorry.
you got it spot on, spot
Okay,
on.
good. She's joining from Kenya. Right now, I usually broadcast my side of the screen from Amsterdam. I'm in Morocco at the moment, so we're both on the African continent, the continent of the next century. I'm super excited you're here. You're a career and clarity coach. We both have a career in finance, got out of it some way or another. So I'm really curious, what how that was for you, whether that is the pivotal moment you want to share here. If there's other moments that you want to share, we'll dive into it. We'll have a great conversation. Um, yeah, please, Susan, the floor is yours. Feel free to introduce yourself and also straight away mention where people can reach you. Uh, yeah, welcome.
Oh, well, for sure, the one place they can reach me is on LinkedIn because clearly we are
Yes.
going live on LinkedIn. I
Uh-huh.
absolutely love LinkedIn. So, yes, definitely make sure you reach me on LinkedIn, connect with me, follow me, do all those, send me a message. I love to read messages. And I like to say I wear many hats, and those hats seem to increase each and every day. So I started out as just Susan, the person, and over the years I have added on to those hats. So I am Susan, I am a wife, I am a mother, I am the proud mother of published authors. So that's like the biggest thing happening in my life right now, and I'm so excited about it. I never imagined that my kids would publish books, but they did, and so that's been very interesting. But on the professional side, former banker turned career clarity coach for banking professionals. I have walked in the shoes of very many bankers, and I am more than honored that they bring me on board to walk alongside them as they also go through their own pivotal moments. And for sure, Bas, I have several. The banking one is the first one, but I have other pivotal moments across my journey that I can't wait, and I'm really looking forward to sharing. So thank you so much for having me here.
Okay, great. Then let's dive in straight away. If you look back at your life recently or further away, what was that like pivotal moment for you in your life and career that made a significant impact? And sorry, while before you answer that question, I do see like some people commenting.
Mhm.
Um, I see Martin is I'll share it here. The best information ever, and then there is um, Rima, can I join, please? I don't know what you want to join. If you have any questions, uh, please feel free to write them in the comment, and we'll see if we can answer those questions. Um, yeah. So, how would you answer that question, Susan?
Pivotal moments. So I think pivotal moments have been several because I see sort of like my life and my career in phases. And I think
Hmm.
one of the pivotal moments for me was looking for that job when I first finished university and realizing that I wasn't getting the job that I was looking for. And that's essentially how I found myself in banking. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I'd find myself in banking because I'd always dreamed of helping people. And while I now get to do it, the truth is, in those early days, I wasn't. I actually started out as a salesperson. So, Bas, you and me know when you actually run a business, you need to be able to sell. But when you're not born naturally and told, go off and sell, and suddenly it's your job, you spend very many sleepless nights trying to figure out where that next sale is coming from. So, that was, I think, one of my key pivotal moments, realizing that the life that I thought I was going to have was not turning out the way I thought it would. And I was having this tension between what I wanted and what was. So I wanted
Hmm.
to help people, But in my job, I was selling, and it didn't feel like sales was a way to help people. Part of it was culture. You know, when people think of sales, they think of hard driving person who tries and cons you and tries to take all your money and tries to make you take things you don't actually want. So that was one of that first pivotal moments, that this is what I want, but this is what I have. So how do I actually bridge the gap between what I want and what I have? And how do I also then shift my circumstances to have more of what I want than what I actually have? I think that was the starting point. As I've been reflecting in preparation for this conversation, I realized that was actually it. That's where it all started. And I don't know, Bas, have you found yourself in a similar scenario where what you want and what you have are two totally different things?
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I don't recognize what I have, and then there's always like this want. Uh, and I've found myself in different careers. Um, and the sometimes it's maybe sometimes it feels like a curse that whatever career I take on, I seem to make it work, or I have like I have the talents to make it work. Uh, but it also, someone the other day used the term, I'm a career tourist, and I'm like, okay,
Hmm,
that's something
that's an
that
interesting
that
one.
I recognize. You know, I
Hmm,
started off in a career in hotel industry. Then then I applied at a company that was transporting valued goods,
mhm,
and I was like this close of being hired, and had I gotten that position, I would not have gotten I would not have gotten into, well, I mean, it's kind of finance related, but I would have not gotten into the trading uh, career that I had for well, let's say 20 years. Um, so um, yeah, that was like I've looked back at that moment. If I'd taken that job, or if they would have given me that job, how my life would have been different.
yeah.
Uh, but I mean, this is how it went. I mean, I've been, of course, fully responsible for what I've done and the choices that I made, and also to choose
Yeah.
to leave my trading position. Um, yeah, so
And I
I'm
like what you say.
curious.
No, I like
Yeah.
what you say about choices, because many times, well, I later realized, which is what led to my second transition. So I spent more than 10 years in banking. So after finding myself in a space that I didn't want to be in, I found a way to actually do a lot more of what I wanted to do. So I found a way in my
Hmm.
banking career of doing the things that made me happy, doing the things that brought me joy. And for me, that was always something around people development. So whether that was teaching, training, mentoring, coaching, well, in hindsight, I actually started doing all these things long before I officially started doing them. And the thing I realized towards the end of my banking career, because eventually I left, and that was the
Hmm.
second biggest pivotal moment for me. Eventually I left, but I had to recognize what you said, choices, that I did have a choice. Because too often people feel, or it can feel like you don't have a choice, that you must remain where you are because, and of course, there's all these many reasons. Bills must be paid, granted. But
Hmm.
sometimes it's a question of, must you pay your bills at the expense of your happiness, at the expense of your joy, at the expense of waking up every morning with a sense of purpose? Because that then became a choice I had to make. I could stay where I was, things were comfortable, I understood what was going on, I didn't need to really think, I didn't need to extend myself too much, or I could reach beyond what I thought was possible and actually take hold of an opportunity that seemingly came from nowhere, but it combined everything that I enjoyed to do. It was almost like that perfect role that had been created just for me. So then I had to make a choice. Do I stay or do I leave? And if I stay, what does that mean for me in another 5, 10 years? And if I leave, what does that mean for me in another 5, 10 years? And I remember having conversations with people who had been in banking for over 20 years, They couldn't understand, why do you want to go away? Like, come on, you have this salary, you're paid at the same time every month, you're guaranteed that you're going to get paid, you know exactly what's going to happen, you have good benefits, you have, overall, it's a good employer. Why do you want to leave? And so I actually had to answer that question to so many people, way more people than I can remember, including my own
Uh,
mother.
oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
my mother was a career banker. She'd worked for the same organization for more than 35 years. She could not comprehend why I was so determined to make a life outside of banking. And yet I kept saying, you know what, this job doesn't quite allow me to do everything that I want to do. And that's why I want to leave. And so I had all these voices in my head telling me, you should stay. I mean, come on, give it one more year, give it a few more months. Maybe you're giving up too soon. Maybe you are imagining that something's going to happen and it doesn't happen. And at the same time, people kept asking, so what are you going to do about your loans? What if it doesn't work out when you leave? What if you get fired? Well, I eventually did, not due to any fault of my own. But one of the biggest lessons from that time is that sometimes you must take that risk to
Hmm.
get what it is that you want and to have the life that you are dreaming about. Like, it's possible. Too many of us think, I can only have the life that I have and not the one that I want. And they have all these, well, we call them reasons, but they're more of excuses. And it's an excuse because if you thought long and hard about it, you'd find your way around it. So I think that was the second biggest pivotal moment when I left banking, when I transitioned out of banking, and I
Well,
transitioned to work for a startup.
yeah. So I do have a question for you because
Mhm.
you said that, like they terminated your contract, or that was it, well, however that happened, it happened. You could have chosen to find another role within finance or within banking, right?
Yep.
But why you decided not to?
So one of the things that I did in the
Hmm.
many years that I was in banking, in my pursuit of living, because many bankers will tell you they are forever in a state of career transition. They're always thinking of leaving banking. Now, the percentage who actually leave is very small. So as I was thinking about what are my non-negotiables in a role, none of those non-negotiables was around banking. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
about the industry. It was about what kind of work would I get to do every day? How well would it use my skill set? And how well would I be able to explore? Because I was also looking for an opportunity to explore, to stretch myself, to develop myself. So, what opportunities were there to develop myself? I was looking for opportunities that would allow me to get squarely into people development. So when I was in banking, I got to do a lot of people development work, but it was not direct people development work. I wanted to wake up every day knowing I'm going to go and I'm going to be training people. I'm going to be mentoring. I'm going to be coaching. Like, that's going to be my full-time job. That's what I'm going to do every single day. And when I needed to leave, banking was not necessary for me to do that. In fact,
Hmm.
perhaps any industry would have been okay as long as I got my non-negotiables. But I first had to know what they were. I mean, one of the biggest things I know that I've seen my clients struggle with is knowing, what do I say yes to and what do I say no to. So the reason I could say yes to an uncertain future, because it was a startup, and startups by their very nature are volatile. Many startups, you're not sure if 3 years from now whether they're still going to be in business. You
Hmm.
have no idea whether you'll still have a job. You have no idea whether the mission of the company might have changed. They might have made some adaptations to suit society, because I mean, change is everywhere and it happens every day. So I was coming from a very secure industry, but the thing that allowed me to say, okay, you know what, I can choose a bit of unsafe or unsecure if I'm guaranteed that I'll get to do what I love every day. I'll get to do it with an amazing group of people, and I have the opportunity to explore. At that point, those were my top three things. And as you can see, those could have been in any industry. Now, of course,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
some people, they feel I can only do this in a similar industry because, I mean, it's comfortable. I know what is expected of me every day, which is fine. But I came to a place where I accepted I needed change. and I needed to do something that was drastically different from what I'd been doing in banking. And I think it doesn't get as drastic, any more drastic than a startup. Because coming from a bank, you've
Uh-huh.
been in finance, you know there's a rule for everything. So there's a policy, a procedure, there's a guidebook, like there's all these strict terms, conditions, and parameters within which you must work. But then for
Yeah.
a startup, I mean, one day you are in marketing, the next day you are doing business development, the next day you're doing the job you're actually hired for. That's on your job description. And then the next day you're doing all of them together at once. So that's what I was looking for. I was looking for change. I was looking for something different. I was looking to get out of the structure of the industry. And so
Mm-hmm.
that didn't have to be in banking. In fact, I don't actually think it could have been in banking. And it wasn't for lack of trying, because in my attempts to transition, I looked for jobs within banking. I attended a few interviews, and I remember
Mm-hmm.
this one interview I attended. And there were these interviews where they give you like a short assignment. And so
Yeah.
they gave me this assignment. I think they gave me like half an hour and said, this is the assignment, this is the brief of the assignment, this is what you need to come up with. And then at the end, you're going to do a 15-minute presentation to a panel. I'll
Uh-huh.
never forget selling my idea to the panel, and they looked at me like I had lost it. They could not, they couldn't begin to imagine what I was suggesting. Now, the
Uh-huh.
irony is the same suggestion that I had to that panel, I later suggested to a client when I was working at the startup, and they said, sure,
Mm-hmm.
why not? which
Mm-hmm.
which if nothing else, for me, when I finally left, told me I was making the right choice, because up until then, some of the ideas that I was suggesting were considered too, I guess, radical for the
Yeah.
banking industry,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there's this way that we do it in banking, and now you are trying to sort of shake things up, and we are sorry, you're too forward, you're too advanced for us, so we'll just look for someone who's just like us. So the person who
Mm-hmm.
got the job was someone within the same organization, who I think was a lot more, perhaps a lot more subtle, or maybe a lot more conservative in their ideas, and they got the job. I didn't, but I don't regret it.
Okay. So, I mean, like you said something, it's like, I said no to certain things, or I started to say no to certain things. Do you recall what those things are? And are you still saying no to these things?
I am saying no to certain things, yes. So one of the things I've now gotten to a place of understanding, and of course this is, I left banking, worked for a startup. Eventually, the startup restructured after
Mm-hmm.
a few years, and I found myself jobless through redundancy. Now, of course,
Yeah.
redundancy by its very nature means there's nothing I could have done to save my job. But I suddenly found myself job hunting all over again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, at this point in my life, I need to choose what it is that I want to do. And at this point in my life, I think I've earned the right to decide what it is that I want to do and actually go for it without apologies. So, yes, I still find myself saying no to certain things. I say no to things that don't serve my goals, things that don't serve my mission, things that don't actually bring me closer to what it is that I want to achieve. And sometimes that means also saying no to certain people, to certain opportunities, and to certain thoughts and ideas that are not necessarily helping me. So, for example, one of the big questions I ask, if I say yes to this, am I going to learn something from it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it teaching me something? Because if it's not teaching me something, then why should I do it? I don't need to do something simply because of people's expectations, which is what happens for many of us. We say yes because of people's expectations. But I found myself saying, okay, will this teach me something? So when I was leaving banking, was I going to learn something? Absolutely yes. So it was okay for me to leave. The other thing I find myself asking is, how does this serve the bigger goal? And is that, whether that's a goal that's personal, whether it's something that's related to my family, whether that's something related to my own personal and professional development, those are the things that then I ask myself, does it serve my bigger goal? And more importantly, does it align with my values? because there's no point in saying yes to something that I'm going to be so uncomfortable about and squirm all over the place about, because it also doesn't align with my values. So yes, I still say no. I find myself having to say no a lot more now than I ever did before. And part of it is because I've had some unexpected things happen out of my journey and out of actually sharing my story of how I have made my different transitions over time. And you know this, I know this. We only have 24 hours in a day, and there's only so much you can actually do in those 24 hours. And so if I'm not learning, it's not in service to a bigger goal, it doesn't align with my values, I just say no. And particularly if it's something that's going to take even more time. And I learned this the hard way. If I think something's going to take 5 hours, it's probably going to take 10. So because it's probably going to take way more time than I think it will, I need to actually budget in more time. So say yes to fewer things so that there's more time to actually do the things that matter. And I know that's often the hardest. And I'm so curious how you manage it, because I know, like, in your background in trading, that's one of those high pressure, intense, go, 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 go kind of places. So how did you manage to know what to say yes to and what not to say yes to?
Oh, that's a very good question. But I mean, I, at a certain moment, it was over for me, basically, and um, I wanted to say no, this is the end. It took me a long time, it took me like 2 to 3 years before, like, from the initial thought to actually making the decision and just, telling my boss I'm giving my notice. Um, and I did. But what I noticed, that saying no to certain things becomes easier. We tend to think, you cannot say no to things, like, I cannot give up this career, because, like, so many people would kill for it, or would, like, uh the security, the money, the name of the bank, etc. uh Expectations from parents, as you say, or from society. You'll all say no to these things when you give up, let's say, the security of this well-paid job. So, yeah, saying no was a big step for me, but it when I did it, it was there was
Freedom.
immense relief, but also, yeah, freedom, but also there was also anxiety. It's like, what is
Mm.
the future going to bring? Um, and that, but that, like, that anxiety, like, faded very quickly, because you get just, that's I mean, what I realize is that it becomes the new normal, or the
Yeah.
new status quo. It's like, okay, I this is something that I mean, I could have always gone back, which I decided not to. But, you know, the picture I painted for myself by giving up this position, the basically the alternative was living on the street and be poor for the rest of my life, uh, which of course did not happen.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's kind of like the story I created. It's either this or, like, poverty, which uh, um, which is, like, I mean, it's such a lie you tell yourself, but it's like, that's something you see as the absolute truth. It's like,
Yeah.
there's no other way. I will have to sell my house. I'll I don't know what will happen. This No one will ever talk to me again.
Yeah. Yeah. When
Oh, it's like, it's complete nonsense.
whenever I talk to bankers, because I'll often have calls, so bankers will reach out and say, "Hey, can we have a chat? I think I want to leave, but I don't know how." And
Mhm.
whenever we have just that chat, one of the things they'll tell me is, "But Susan, no one's gonna pay me what the bank pays me." And I go like, "Oh, really?" I mean, you never know until you try. So there's this assumption that you make that the bank, no one's ever going to pay you what you get paid at the bank. Then the next thing they're going
Exactly.
to say, yeah, so the next thing they're going to say is, so I have loans. And when I leave, I get preferential loan rates. When I'm here, when I leave, it goes to market rate. So I'm never going to be able to pay my loan at market rate. And I go, is that so? So they've never tried any of these things. But like you're saying, your brain creates this story about how it's practically impossible to get paid at value, to be able to pay your loan at market rate. And so they're always very shocked when I tell them I actually left the bank and I got paid 3 times my salary at the bank. That was the first thing. And then the second thing is they paid me enough to be able to repay my loans at the market rate. So for me now, I know it's a story. So
Oh yeah,
whatever it
yeah.
is, it's a story that, and of course, our human nature is to protect ourselves from change because change is uncomfortable, and your natural instinct is always going to be to walk away from the direction of pain. You walk towards pleasure and away from pain. But sometimes a little bit of pain is good. Because when I left banking and I went to work at a startup, there was pain because I was suddenly in a space that I knew nothing. I was
Hmm.
experiencing change every single day. No 2 days were ever alike. I was
Uh-huh.
forced to think longer, harder, deeper, and with more intensity than I had ever had to do up until that moment. So it was
Hmm.
painful to go through that change. But you know what? Looking back now, I wouldn't trade it for the world because in those 2 years, I think I learned a lot more about myself, a lot more
Yeah.
about what I was capable of, and a lot more about the world than I had in the previous 10 years combined. So we want to avoid pain. We want things to remain the same, but we want things to change at the same time. But the truth is, nothing changes if nothing changes. And part of that changing includes you and your mindset. Like you must change the way you think if you want to see different results. So I have found then since that time, I I can often tell when I am resisting the change that's coming because change is inevitable. I mean, I left banking, I went and worked for a startup. I lost my job through redundancy, suddenly found myself looking for a job, attending tons and tons and tons of interviews and not actually getting a job, and then having to ask, am I going to sit here and say there are no jobs? Or am I going to try and create something for myself that up until this moment I didn't think was possible? Because I promise you, Bas, I had always believed I was a lifelong employee. I remember somewhere midway through my banking career telling a very close relative that I don't think I can do what you do because it's insane. You have no structure. I mean, you just wake up and every day is different. Look at me now, these many years later, post
Uh-huh.
banking, doing the
Oh
very
yeah.
thing that I never thought I would actually ever do because you know what? Life changed and I needed to change if I was going to survive. Otherwise, I would probably be sitting somewhere saying how life is unfair, nobody gets me, and there are no jobs and there's no future, and maybe I need to move to a new country because these are all stories that professionals that I talk to will tell you. I think if I was in a different country, life would be different. But you'd be in a different country and you'd still be the same person, which means not quite. You'd still
Uh-huh.
probably find yourself in the same space a few months later, a few years later, where you are asking, okay, what next? What do I now need to do to be able to actually see something different? So to see different results.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you brought in change into the conversation because that's like the next segment of this LinkedIn Live. And there's a few things that you said, but one of the things that I'd like to look at with you is like going through pain. Um, do you do you think that like change created by, let's say, pain or a painful situation or a difficult situation is easier to create than, let's say, without the pain?
I'm not sure there's ever any scenario where change is easier
Hmm.
because
Okay.
change forces us to destabilize ourselves.
Uh-huh.
And if and even those who naturally by nature like risk, by nature like things that are uncertain, they still like some level of comfort and some
Yeah.
level of, I know what's going to happen next, and I feel like I'm in control of my life. I feel like I'm in control of where things are going. And what happens is change that's brought on by a painful situation or something that's difficult forces you to move faster than you would if you're the one initiating it yourself. So, like the example I gave, I had, well, I did have a bit of notice because with all organizations, you can tell when things aren't working right. By the time
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
there were signs. I mean, there were signs that the business was struggling. There were signs that the economy was being affected. I mean, there were all these signs, and I had also begun to. When I look back, I can see that I had also mentally started making a shift and asking myself, if I didn't come to this office every day, what else could I do with the skills that I have? And that's actually one of the activities that I do with my coaching clients. I ask them, have you done your skills inventory? Because if you don't know what skills you have, then you don't know what you could translate into a different situation. So the change that I went through was painful because I got a month's notice and a letter saying our company is restructuring, some jobs will be affected, it's likely that your job will be affected. So I had a month, and in that
Mm-hmm.
month, what I began to do was to do a bit of research and try and understand, okay, this online space that people are always talking about, what opportunities are available online? And then
Mm-hmm.
looking at my skills inventory, what skills do I have from my collective professional experience that I could take over into a different space, into a different industry, into a different way of working? And so I had a very short time within which to adapt or just be finished. So change then became accelerated because of the
Mm-hmm.
difficult circumstance that I found myself in. But one way or another, I would have eventually found myself there. Because, like you, Bas, I also went through this long time where I was thinking before I left the bank, do I really want to? Can I actually hand in my resignation? Even as I'm looking for this job and sending out applications, am I committed to leave if the opportunity arises? So I think difficult situations and tough circumstances, they accelerate the change, but you could
Yeah.
still intentionally decide things will change and I'm going to be committed to actually change things. Because one of the questions I often ask the clients that I work with, because I'm very conscious of who I work with. I'm very careful about the clients that I bring on board because I want to get results for you fast. But if you're
Yeah.
not committed to yourself, you're not committed to the process of change, I outright tell them it's going to be hard. Like, I'm not sugarcoating this. This is going to be hard. You are sometimes going to have to do things that you've never wanted to do, or things that you know you should but don't want to, but you need to because it's part of your process of change.
Yes.
So, what do you say to that? And some will say, I am on board, I'm here 100%, but. And of course, the minute you hear the word but, it means, yeah, somewhere down the road, I might check out of this process to go and nurse my feelings, because I'm not sure that I can be this committed all the way until the end. But yes, change because of difficult circumstances, very accelerated. But you can also be intentional about the change that you invite into your life, and you can. And I remember we did a training a couple of weeks ago, and the one of the facilitators, because it was a co-facilitated session. So one of our facilitators says, okay, so cross your hands the way you normally would. Okay, so everyone crosses their arms. And then the next time they're told, okay, fine, now try and cross it the other way around. And you could always see people trying to sort of think, wait, which hand goes up, which one goes down? Because then it's
Uh-huh.
forcing you to do something that you don't normally do. And something as small as that can be how you can begin to catalyze your own change without waiting for this epic, painful, difficult situation to come and sort of force you to move into what you need to move into.
Okay. Yeah. So do you think that resistance to change can sometimes be beneficial?
Absolutely. Resistance to change can be beneficial because it forces you to check in with the reasons for resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not all resistance that's a negative thing. It could be resistance because there's something you've noticed or there's something unresolved for you. And because
Yeah.
it's unresolved, you're not able to make that switch. Now,
Mm-hmm.
getting to the bottom of what is unresolved could be the very thing that you need to be able to move and to be able to change. So, resistance to change doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. But I will say that you also need to get to the bottom of why are you resisting? Are you resisting because there's an unresolved thing for you? Are you resisting because
No.
you're not fully convinced about this thing? Like I think resistance forces you to ask questions. Resistance forces you to look deeper into your why. And I think that's a very important component when it comes to change. Why am I resisting? What is it that's still unresolved for me? What questions do I still have, or what
Mm-hmm.
information do I need to be able to make this shift?
Great. I mean, I asked this question to a lot of to well, most of my guests, and I really like your perspective on it. You know, where you take the resistance approach, and it's like, you know, the if you if you tackle the resistance, the change, or tackle, yeah, let's say tackle the
So, Bas,
resistance, the change will come
what are your thoughts
automatically,
around
right?
resistance to change?
What what my thoughts are, um, I think change is inevitable at a certain either you change or the world around you will change. So resisting change is um, holding you, let's say, holding you back.
Still there, Bas?
But
Can you hear me?
yes, I can. You cannot hear me? I think we have a little bit of a glitch here. But I can hear you. Um, can you see me? That's we'll have a bit of a problem with the connection here. Um,
There you are.
oh, you're back. I can hear
I
you.
am
I could
back.
hear you all the time. It's no problem. So, your question was like, what is my
Yeah,
perspective
what's your
on this?
perspective? Yeah.
Um, yeah, so my perspective is it's like, as I already said a bit, like either you change or the world around you will change. It's never like constant. So, yeah, the resistance. And what I liked about the way you said it is like, you know, when you deal with the resistance, you get to be, let's say, free with the change, or you get access to, let's say, the growth that you're that might not necessarily be aware of, or you're avoiding, or you're resisting. Um, and yeah, I really like your approach when it comes to the resistance. Um, I have another question for you. When you compare, let's say, negative change to positive change, do you think we resist both in a similar way?
I think we resist all change as change. I mean, there are times when I'm having because I'll usually do like a strategy call with potential clients, and we'll do a strategy call, and someone will say, "This is the dream that I have. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what the future looks like. This is what has been holding me back." And so I'll ask, "Okay, so how ready do you feel to get started?" And
Mm-hmm.
they'll say, "I think I'm at a 4." And so
Yeah.
they've painted this picture of the future they want. They've told me how life has been terrible, it's been horrible, they absolutely cannot see a way out, but this conversation is totally helping them. And I ask, okay, fine, so now you have an idea of what it is that you need to do, so how committed are you to do it? And they'll say a 4. And so when that's positive change, I mean, you are moving from what you don't want to what you want, but you're still not ready for it. Now,
Uh-huh.
at the same time, when you're thinking, I need, and I went through something which I then considered to be a negative change. I had to change departments. So I was changing departments because I was seconded, which was a good thing. It was the growth that I wanted, but I was leaving the comfort of the people I knew and the team that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling terrible about it. I was so sad about it. I told everyone how I absolutely do not want to leave anymore. And it's going to be so difficult to move into this new team. And the new team I was going to work with had a reputation of being so many things and not other things. So that was in some ways negative in the sense that I was leaving something that I wanted. But my response was exactly the same as if I was leaving to something absolutely good. So I think at the end of the day, whether it's negative, whether it's positive, change is change. And we'll sort of shake ourselves and say, I want it, but I don't want it. And
Mm-hmm.
because I want it, but at the same time I don't want it, somebody tell me what I need to do, or somebody come and solve all my problems so that I don't have to actually deal with it. And of course, no one can solve your problems for you. You must always solve them yourself, one way or another. Because anyone who's coming alongside you is only coming to support what you've already begun. Like no one can move you from A to B without you wanting to actually move from A to B.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like when I resigned, I took a sabbatical and I went to Brazil. And that's
Mhm.
like something that I really wanted to do. But then like the moment I landed there, it's like, why did I decide that I wanted to do this? Why did I think this was a good idea? Now I have to make it happen here. I have to create a life for the next coming like weeks, months, uh,
Yep.
and then you get, I mean, I get into action and things like work out. But the initial thing was really like, why did I think this was a good idea?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So there is a comment from uh, Nancy. She says that resistance to change is beneficial. It's feedback on what
Yeah.
concerns exist that need to be addressed to gain the buy-in. Um, I think that's kind of what you said, but would you like to respond to that or?
I particularly like what she said. It's feedback.
Hmm.
It's actually feedback. It's something tangible that you can actually use to know what it is that needs to get done. And I think also where Nancy is coming from, because I do know Nancy, she's also
Okay.
coming from a corporate change management perspective as well. Because when it comes to change management, you have all these people within your organization who have different thoughts, they have different ideas, and they need to understand why we must go through this process to change to get what it is that we want. And if people are saying we don't want to move, understanding why they don't want to move then helps you get one more thing right so that your change management process can actually be successful. So absolutely, I concur with her. And I've seen this especially because I also do consulting work with organizations just around learning
Hmm.
and development. And often, when you're coming in and you are either trying to implement something that's new, either putting in place maybe mentoring, coaching, talking to managers. Just this past week, we were doing competency interview based training for managers. And old habits die hard. So there's a certain way you actually run a competency based interview. But then when people go into practice sessions, you can see their normal way of asking questions sort of filtering back into how they ask their questions. So they have this template. They've been told this is the framework for asking your questions, but then they'll still
Hmm.
go ahead and ask them the way they've always asked because that's what's easier to actually do. And so every single day, when you think about it, any change of any form, as long as it's a behavioral thing, buy-in must come in, because if I don't buy into why I need to do this, then I won't actually do it. And if I don't want to do it, no one can actually make me do it. And I think that was one of the toughest lessons for me to learn, and to also accept that there are moments when I don't want to do this thing. I know how it's going to help me. I know how it's a very good thing and it's a fantastic idea, but I don't want to. And I have to ask myself, okay, come on, Susan, why don't you actually want to do this? What is it about this that scares you? And more often than not, I'd find that it was something that I maybe had never done before. And so I was finding
Hmm.
myself swimming in unfamiliar waters. And of course,
Yeah,
when you're
yeah, yeah.
swimming in unfamiliar waters, and particularly, and you must have seen this because you work with executives, because I don't want to say I don't know, or because I feel there's an expectation that I should know, I'd rather
Hmm.
do nothing, not to expose my lack of knowledge, my lack of understanding, or the fact that I just don't have answers. And after some time, you actually have to get comfortable with the idea that, sometimes it's okay not to know. You can actually say, I do not know. And
Yes.
let it be. I was in a meeting with some senior leaders a few weeks ago. We were strategizing for a meeting that we were planning, and they asked me a question I had no idea. Like, I literally had no clue what the answer
Uh,
was. And so I had to say, you know what? I actually don't have an idea for you right now. I don't have an answer for you right now, but you know what? I'm going to investigate it a bit. I'm going to do a bit of research and then I'll come back to you with some suggestions. And it was accepted and we moved on. Years ago, as I was trying to climb the corporate ladder, I always felt that I had to have all the answers. I always felt that I needed to have all the ideas, all the, everything, all ducks aligned, but you can't know everything. And so sometimes the best thing you can actually say is, I do not know, but I
yes.
will find out. And that's always the critical part. Just that idea that I'm open to discovering, I'm open to learning, and I'm open to also exploring something I haven't done before. I think that's what makes the difference between those who resist change for resistance sake and the people who resist for some time as they fill in the blanks that then allow them to make that shift and do what they actually need to do.
Well said. Yeah, what, there was something that you said and now I forgot. Oh yeah, 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 about like saying that you don't know, that like if you would have tried to cover that, or like people would know that you didn't know anyway,
Yep.
and it's so much more powerful to just say, hey, I don't know this. I'll come back in X amount of time and I'll give you an answer. Because no one expects you to know everything. So yeah, great insight, and also like, and it takes something to be to I mean it's kind of like a vulnerable thing to be
Mm-hmm.
able to say, hey, I don't know, and then but I'll make sure I'll know next time, or in a week, or in 2 days, whatever you can promise. And then, like, of course, stick with your promise. Um, I want to take it into the last section of this live, Susan.
Yep.
And I'm just like, I'm just like, what is it that you creating for your future, or like a project, a goal, or what are you working on that you'd like to share with the audience, or something that you just want to create for yourself professionally, or in your private life?
So I'm on a mission to help 5,000 professionals in the next 5 years to gain clarity for their careers.
Hmm.
And well, while that sounds like this huge ambitious goal, I discovered if you break it down, it's not that huge. It's actually very doable. And so one of the things I commit to doing every week is having conversations with people who are seeking clarity for their careers. So people who are
Yes.
thinking, I want to leave banking, I want to transition into something else, I have no idea what that next thing is. Or people who genuinely love what it is that they do, they just feel that they're not growing the way they actually want to grow. So the
Hmm.
past 1 month, I've ended up having very many conversations with people who are looking for career advancement. So they're looking for promotions. They want to step into senior leadership, or they are in senior leadership and they want to find that next thing for themselves, but they're struggling. And part of their struggle is that they don't actually know how to ask for what they want. And many times people wrongly assume that if I work hard, you're going to see how hard I'm working, and then you'll promote me. But it doesn't work that way. Ask me, I know. So I wanted to get, I was trying to get promoted, and I thought all my hard work would speak for itself. But hard work alone is not enough. So actually, one of the things that I am working on right now and I'll be doing for the next 30 days is an actual self-advocacy challenge. So I'm doing a self-advocacy email challenge for people who want, one, you want to get promoted, but you don't know how to actually ask for your promotion, or you want some change, you want some transition, you want things to be different for your career, but you have no clue how to actually ask. So I'm actually taking 30 days. Every single day, people get an email with an action point around how they can
Uh-huh.
advocate for themselves, for their careers. So that's something that I'm excited about. So people have been signing up. We kick off on Monday, the 6th of November, and I'm looking forward to helping people know how to better advocate for themselves, because we are at that time of the year when people feel that, oh my goodness, I had this goal. I was going to leave this job. I was going to get promoted. I was going to transition. I was going to go start my own business, but I haven't. And they feel like because it's November, there is no hope for you yet. But the truth is, there's always hope for you. So the other thing that I'm also very excited about is helping 5 professionals, senior leaders, senior managers who actually want just clarity around what's next for their careers. So I am looking to work with 5 of them before Christmas, because there's still something that people can do before the year winds up. If there's one thing you can actually do is to get clarity. You don't have to actually transition, but if you get clarity, that's one step closer to what you actually want. Because I found that for very many of the people that I work with, very many of the banking professionals, very many of the leaders that I work with, it's about clarity. It's about being very clear about what it is that you want. Because if you don't know what you want, then how do you know what to ask for? And those two are very closely tied. So self-advocacy challenge is on my plate, as well as working with 5 professionals before Christmas to help them get clarity so that they can prepare. And for 2024, they can jump into 2024 dancing rather than mourning yet another year where they feel like they're still in the same space. It's funny how year in, year out, we do the exact same things. And we hope that
Absolutely.
next year is going to be different. But nothing's
Mhm.
going to change if you actually don't do things differently. Just today, somebody reminded me of that quote by Einstein, where it says insanity is doing the same thing the same way and expecting different results. So I, as Susan, I'm not doing things the same way, expecting different
Uh-huh.
results. I'm being intentional about changing. I'm being intentional about the things that I want to see and the things that I want to achieve. Some of them are scary. Some of them
Yeah.
have involved, like I said, saying, I have no idea, but taking time out to research and actually find out. And some of them include having conversations with you, Bas, because I think I've talked about parts of my story that I've never shared before, but this, just preparing to come and have this chat with you, forced me to reflect. And I now should write a book. What do you think?
If you want to write it, I mean, you're surrounded by book writers, so maybe you should. If there's enough for you to write about, go for it. Are you resisting it?
No,
uh,
so funny story, Bas. I actually
yeah.
started writing a book. I have a book. It
Okay.
was a draft. It got edits. That's where life got difficult. When I got all the
Okay.
edits, because it was all marked out in red by the editor,
Ah.
like from the first to the end, like this needs me more meat, this blah. So she actually gave me a very detailed feedback about what I needed to do, and that's sort of
Uh-huh.
where I got stuck.
Okay.
so
Okay.
so I need to get a book coach to get me past my own resistance to making corrections and doing edits. So yeah, but I'll write a book, Pass. Don't worry. It's
Okay.
it's
Oh
somewhere
no.
it's somewhere in my future, not my immediate future, but it's definitely somewhere in my future.
Great. The Paul Uniyango, he's encouraged you to write a book. I don't know if you know him.
No, I
Um,
don't.
okay, okay, okay. Yeah, so what I wanted to say about that is like, and you're right, what Einstein says, and and by the things that you are creating. Just a quick question: are you still taking people for the advocacy group, or is that closed because the November 6th is coming up very
It's
quickly?
Nope, still open. People can still
Okay,
register. My LinkedIn
good.
profile, I think I've done a
Okay,
post on it this week. So if you go back to my
okay,
post, you should see the link on there. So definitely something that they can still sign up for. We already have quite a good number of people signed up. So join the community of people who have signed up and let's help you advocate for yourself.
great.
2024 must be a different year because you are taking charge today. You are
Yes.
shaping tomorrow today. So the actions you take today determine the future that you'll actually see.
Yeah, and this is also like, if you want, what you said, we hope the next year is going to be different, but then it ends up being exactly the same. Um, and well, I believe how you can break that is like, start putting a structure in place, which you probably haven't done over the past years or the past months or whatever you're dealing with. Once you start putting like a structure in place and allocating also like time in your calendar, things really start to move. You reflect, you adjust, you change the course, and then things really start to look different. And you're doing, I mean, as to go with Einstein, you're doing something different. Maybe you're hoping for the same result, but you're really doing something different, which is very likely to create a different result. So we're coming to the end of the conversation. Um, is there anything you wanna leave the audience with? Please feel free to. I mean, you shared a bit about what you're working on, what people can join you for. Where can people reach you? You have the floor to be fully promotional about yourself.
Well, I will say for sure, the one place you can definitely reach me on is LinkedIn. So send me a message. I have an open profile, which means even if we're not connected, you can actually send me a message. Tell me what you're thinking about in terms of your career. Tell me where things are at. If you are wanting to make a transition, let's talk about what that transition could look like for you. And let's talk about what working together might also look like. So send me a message for sure. And part of the reason why I ask people to send me a message is because that's a step. And what people don't realize is what you want is several steps away, but it must start with a step. So any great step starts with one, and the first one is always the hardest. But then when you make that first step, use the momentum of that one step to keep you going. So recently, I'm in a WhatsApp group, and somebody said, you need to think about your LinkedIn profile. You need to make sure your LinkedIn profile is optimized because LinkedIn is where recruiters spend time, clients spend time there. Like everyone spends a lot of time on LinkedIn. And so everyone says, a few people say in the group, oh my goodness, my LinkedIn profile, I have no idea what to do with it. And I sent a message and said, send me your link. Let me take a look. And so this one lady, I sent her a few tips and she says, this is amazing. Thank you. And I say, beyond thanking me, go and actually implement. Because if you
Uh-huh.
don't, you could get great advice. So somebody might be on here with us listening and they're thinking, oh, this is wonderful. This is amazing. But if you don't actually do anything with what you know, what you've had, then you're still going to find yourself in the same place. So my takeaways are start. No matter how small that step is, it's a step. Do not look down on small steps, small beginnings. They all count for something. So take that first step. And then once you've taken the first step, let the momentum of that first step keep you going. Do not stop until you actually achieve your goal. And then more importantly, reach out for help. If what you've tried all these years, this whole year, not January to October 31st, whatever it is you've been trying hasn't been working, clearly you need to try something else. Clearly you need to see things differently. Perhaps you need an alternative perspective. And that's why people like myself and Bas are here, so that you get a different perspective. Reach out to somebody who can give you a different perspective from the one that you have. Because many times the answers that you're looking for, you have them, but you're so caught up in this cycle of telling yourself and going around in circles, you can't actually see outside of your situation. But somebody who's outside of it, who doesn't have a stake in it, whose life does not depend on its success or failure, can actually see things that you don't see and be able to help you get out of your cycle of overthinking. Because way too many of us overthink all the time. Like all the time, all the time, all the time. And for anyone who still feels, okay, I'm not ready yet, Susan, thank you so much. I'd like to chat with you, but you sound scary. I'm not ready to be asked the hard questions. Then follow me. I share useful content on career growth, career development, career advancement, and career clarity every single week. So you'll still get free nuggets. I promise you, my nuggets are practical and actionable. So even when I tell stories, there's always a moral to the story, and there's always something you can actually action in your own life. So if you're not ready to have a chat with me just yet, follow me on LinkedIn, follow my posts, get to learn. And whenever you're ready, send me a message.
Yes. I want to add one little thing because that's something that I've noticed as well, where people think they need to be ready or they need to be at a certain level, or they'd be like, maybe he or this person is too big for me or too advanced for me. It's no, it's really, it only takes that first step, and then you'll take it from there. And don't think don't please do not think you're not good enough to talk to either one of us, because we don't live in that world, and we don't look at you like that. You are great as you are, and just take that step, as Susan says. um so I wanna conclude here. Susan, I really want to thank you for joining me. It was a real pleasure to listen to your story and the things that you shared with the listeners and with me. Um, the time went by so quickly. We in the pre-talk, we talked it was going to be a little bit shorter, but as we went along, it was so to me such a valuable conversation that we continued. um I hope you got value out of this conversation. I will be here next week with another guest. Um, Once again, Susan, thank you, and I'll hope to see all of you viewers next week. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Bas. And make your next stop Kenya.
I will. I will. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.